Hello fellow YouTubers, my name is Adrian.exe. In this episode of Armchair Journalism, we will cover what exactly has been happening in Mexico after El Chapo's reign came to an end, and who exactly displaced the Sinaloa cartel from the top of the drug trafficking throne.
It may come as a shock, but the truth is that we are far from winning the war on drugs, and as reality has shown us recently, capturing one drug lord causes a struggle for power, fragmentation among certain groups, and lots of violence. Since 2006, the year Mexico's government declared its war on drugs, more than 150,000 people have died due to drug-related violence, and 37,000 people have gone missing. Last year, more than 9,000 people went missing, and nearly 8,500 people have died due to cartel-related violence and warfare. There have been so many deaths that morgues no longer have room to store bodies, and use death trailers instead. These clandestine mass graves in Mexico and the lack of a robust DNA database to identify the deceased makes it difficult to combat impunity and track those who went missing. Currently, 20 of Mexico's 31 states lack the DNA databases needed to identify unclaimed bodies. Unlike terrorist organizations, DTOs, or drug trafficking organizations do not have a political ideology or a goal in mind, other than making money, making it difficult to label them as a terrorist organization, which President Trump plans to do soon. This declaration by the president was prompted by the killing of 9 U.S. citizens, including 6 children, on a highway connecting the Mexican border states of Sonora and Chihuahua on November 5th, 2019. What are we doing now to help end the drug war? The United States' role in this war on drugs includes the Merida Initiative, which is a multi-billion-dollar initiative aiding the Mexican government with aircraft, training, and equipment. The election of Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador in 2018 brought about the formation of a new National Guard, deployment of military forces throughout the country, and the sending of federal troops to Tijuana. Earlier last year, in May of 2019, President Obrador stated, "We do not want the so-called Merida Initiative." Additionally, the Trump administration requested $76.3 million in 2020 to fund the Merida Initiative, which was 35% less than the amount given in 2018. The problems in Mexico directly impact us here in the US due to Mexican DTOs being one of the largest suppliers of heroin, fentanyl, methamphetamines, and cocaine, according to the DEA. And if you watch my Narcos the USA video, you know that they also have connections with local gangs in the US, in charge of distributing and selling the drugs smuggled across the border. The production of heroin alone has increased by 37% between 2016 and 2017 due to the opioid epidemic here in the US. Furthermore, seizures of fentanyl at ports like Nogales have doubled. The popularity of fentanyl has also affected poppy farmers, who are almost out of a job due to the preference of a more potent drug, which causes some to turn to crime as a response. On top of that, it seems that cartels can produce fentanyl in Mexico rather than obtaining precursors from China. The surge of American deaths due to synthetic opioids has increased from 3,000 in 2013 to more than 30,000 in 2018. According to the Washington Post, synthetic opioid overdoses have now killed more Americans than the wars in Vietnam, Afghanistan, and Iraq combined. Which cartels have been active in Mexico? The main DTOs in Mexico are the Sinaloa Cartel, the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, the Juarez Cartel, the Gulf Cartel, Los Zetas, and the Beltran Leyva organization. The Sinaloa Cartel was formed in 1989 and was formerly led by Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, and now led by Ismael El Mayo Zapata Garcia, as well as Guzman's sons. Currently, the Sinaloa Cartel controls most of the Pacific coast, specifically the areas highlighted in brown. These striped brown highlights are disputed territories. The Jalisco Cartel New Generation, formerly known as Los Torcidos, or Cartel Jalisco Nueva Generación, abbreviated CJNG, is a group that splintered off from the Sinaloa Cartel and formed after the Sinaloa Cartel capo Ignacio Coronel had been killed by Mexican security forces in 2010. The CJNG, which has about 5,000 members, is run by Nemesio Oseguera Ramos, aka El Mencho, who is said to be Mexico's new El Chapo. Unlike El Chapo, however, El Mencho is straight edge, in shape due to his military training, doesn't mind hiding in the wilderness, and his cartel is more brutal than the Sinaloa cartel. His estimated net worth ranges between $500 million and $1 billion. Also, here's a map, highlighted in livid, showing where the CJNG operates. According to the DEA, this group is characterized by its willingness to engage in violent confrontations. But that is putting it mildly. El Mencho has reportedly ordered the murders of women and children, and according to DEA agent Cal Mori, they are very violent. Decapitations, dissolving bodies in acid, public executions, ripping out the heart, killing women and children, bombings against people. It happens almost every day. El Chapo was violent, but El Mencho has taken it to a new level. The CJNG is the cartel that the media sees as the group that displaced the Sinaloa cartel. Another group, the long-standing rival of the Sinaloa cartel, the Juarez cartel, formed in 1970 and is led by Juan Pablo Ledesma. It controls the north-central state of Chihuahua, which is across the border from New Mexico and Texas. The remnants of the Juarez cartel are also highlighted in brown on the map shown. The Gulf cartel, formed in the 1930s and formerly led by Luis Blanco, aka Pelochas, and Juan Salinas, aka El Toro, controls the northeastern state of Tamaulipas. Recent arrests by the DEA has severely faltered their power. The areas where the remnant groups still operate are highlighted in olive green in the map shown. Los Zetas started as a paramilitary group employed by the Gulf cartel. They split from the Gulf cartel after the capture of Osiel Yin, and split even further by the capture of Jose Valencia. The number of splinter cells of Los Zetas makes it difficult to identify the leaders. However, what is known is that the splinter cells that used to make up Los Zetas as a whole now control parts of Tamaulipas and the Gulf Coast. The areas where the remnant groups still operate are highlighted in olive green in the map shown. The Beltran Leyva organization, started by the Beltran Leyva brothers, split from the Sinaloa cartel in 2008. Their recent arrests and deaths have diminished their power, but some of their loyalists are still in operation in Mexico. The areas where the remnant groups still operate are highlighted in brown in the map shown. Were these groups active in 2019? Yes, on April 19th in Veracruz, CJNG killed 14 people, including a 1-year-old baby. This was allegedly caused by a clash between Los Zetas and CJNG. Additionally, on April 4th, the Grupo Sombra left a decapitated corpse and a narco flag to warn the CJNG. On August 8th, 9 bodies were found hanging from an overpass of a bridge in Mexico City. 7 more dismembered corpses were found at a nearby road, and 3 more non-dismembered bodies were found close by near another road. Alongside the bodies hanging was a CJNG banner. How are drugs entering the US, you may ask? Drugs enter the US through over 300 ports of entry, controlled by Customs and Border Protection. Traffickers smuggle drugs using anything from tractor trailers to cargo trains. They also have utilized underground tunnels that go through the border, and even drones. Even with the capture of El Chapo, there is seemingly no end to the number of drugs coming into the US, as evidenced by the recent amount of fentanyl seized on January 31st of last year, linked to the Sinaloa cartel at the Nogales port of entry. You might be wondering at this point, shouldn't targeting and killing the head of every cartel effectively disband the cartel, as it did with Pablo Escobar? No, unfortunately, it hasn't, and many operations aimed at arresting or killing heads of cartels have had a marginally positive effect. The effect has mostly caused fragmentation and a constant battle for territory. Luckily, President Obrador has been reluctant to solely implement the kingpin strategy, which involves the popular method of taking down the CEOs of criminal organizations. The problem with this methodology is that it shows little results and aids in perpetuating the narrative that this strategy works. Another problem with this approach is that drug cartels are not just vertically integrated organizations, but both horizontally and vertically integrated. Horizontal integration is when a company takes over another company providing a similar service, essentially absorbing the competition. Vertical integration refers to a company taking control of one of the businesses operating within the supply chain. Cartels not only have a hold on poppy fields, vertical integration, but have a transnational network that aids in distributing drugs like fentanyl. Additionally, cartels are also now competing with internet-based drug trafficking that buys directly from China, where fentanyl precursors can be obtained, and create the drug from scratch in the US, meaning that cartels and drug suppliers in general are more complexly structured than ever before, and new methods will need to be implemented to combat drug trafficking. So at this point, you may be asking yourself, what do we do then? The methodology needs to change and needs to be tackled holistically. Be committed to understanding the psychological reasons behind illicit drug use and how it affects the law. Poverty also tends to be a factor that draws people into the life of crime. If you don't believe me, ask Miguel Gallardo. He wrote the following in his diary. Today, the violence in the cities needs a program of national reconciliation. There needs to be a reconstruction of villages and ranches to make them self-sufficient. There needs to be assembly plants and credit at low interest, incentives for cattle and schools. He also wrote, violence can be fought with jobs. We must remember that in the mountains of Mexico, the people are forgotten. There are no medical clinics, roads, or security, only repression. A great example of how we are viewing the issue can be seen in how we handled the El Chapo trial, where a great amount of effort was placed in suppressing testimony or mentioning of anything that highlighted the corrupt Mexican government. U.S. involvement in the drug war and the poverty rate in Mexico and its effect on the local communities. A solution has been proposed by President Obrador. The National Development Plan for 2019 through 2024 plans to end the prohibition on drugs and redirect funds towards rehabilitation or drug treatment programs. Currently, 2 people are allowed to use and transport cocaine, and Mexico's Supreme Court gave Congress until April 20th, 2020 to approve legislation that legalizes all forms of cannabis. It seems due to the profit paradox, simply limiting the number of drugs that enter the US is not enough either. The profit paradox refers to limiting the amount of product available, but by doing so, it increases the profits that can be made from the said product, hence the name profit paradox. The Hydra effect also plays a role. The effect refers to cutting down one organization just to have 2 more pop up. Even if we kill or arrest all cartel leaders, there will always be a group ready and willing to take its place, as long as there is a demand for drugs. Many experts agree that drug treatment facilities are the solution to stopping the demand for drugs. It has worked in other countries. For example, a study by the American Journal on Addictions found that when France allowed its citizens to access buprenorphine, an opioid addiction treatment medication, overdose deaths decreased by 79%, and this decrease happened while the number of people attending treatment increased. Another factor that aids cartels in continuing the smuggling of drugs are money laundering banks like HSBC and Wells Fargo. HSBC was fined in 2012, $1.9 billion, which was just a fraction of their $16.8 billion profits in 2011. Assistant U.S. Attorney General Lanny Breuer stated that as a result of the government's investigation, HSBC has clawed back deferred compensation bonuses given to some of its most senior U.S. anti-money laundering and compliance officers, and agreed to partially defer bonus compensation for its most senior officials during the 5-year period of the deferred prosecution agreement. The U.S. Department of Justice held back on criminal prosecution because of fear that it may cripple the financial institution, regardless of the violation of the Bank Secrecy Act, Trading with the Enemy Act, and other AML statutes. The U.S.'s war on drugs has also led to illegal ATF operations like Operation Fast and Furious to occur, in which straw buyers would purchase weapons that the ATF would track in hopes that it would reach high-level figures in Mexican cartels. The results of the operation led people in Mexico to be maimed or killed by those same guns. The operation also resulted in the death of U.S. Border Patrol agent Brian Terry. In conclusion, no, we did not win, nor are we close to winning the war on drugs. It has cost many human lives, as well as $51 billion in spending by the US. Furthermore, capturing leaders like El Chapo has had little effect in stopping cartels, and may have made the situation in Mexico worse. The only plausible solutions for both the US and Mexican governments is to adjust their tactics from solely using kingpin-focused takedowns and supply-oriented sabotage to include methods backed by evidence, like drug rehabilitation. Additionally, both governments need to severely punish both financial institutions that willingly launder cartel drug money and corrupt politicians, like former Secretary of Public Security Genaro Garcia Luna. If they don't, then we will never see an end to the drug war or the bloodshed that accompanies it anytime soon. Thanks for watching the remake of the first episode of Armchair Journalism. If you liked this video and want to see more, feel free to like and subscribe for more content. Also, if you do decide to subscribe, be sure to hit that notification bell so that you can be notified whenever I upload. Thanks.